They told him to stop singing or die. How Barrington Levy's Shine Eye Gal sparked a dancehall war that nearly ended his career. The real story involves armed soundmen, midnight escapes, and a producer who saved his life. Watch till the end. The reason he fled Jamaica will shock you. This isn't just music history, it's survival. When Barrington Levy first picked up a microphone, he had no idea that one day, a song from the depths of his heart would nearly cost him his life. The streets of Kingston were no strangers to lyrical battles, misinterpretations, and raw emotion. But when Barrington Levy unleashed the verses of Shine Eye Gal at a local sound system dance, the storm it summoned was unlike anything he'd ever faced. It wasn't just a song anymore. It was a lightning rod for conflict. Born into the pulsing rhythm of Kingston 11, Barrington Levy didn't grow up chasing fame. As a young boy, he moved with his family to Clarendon, a quieter stretch of Jamaica, where the beat of the streets didn't drown out dreams. But the pull of music dragged him back to Kingston as a teenager. And it was there, among zinc fences and street corners echoing with rhythms, that he teamed up with his cousin to form a group they called the Mighty Multitudes. Their voices fused like sunrise and shadow, and they believed they were meant to change the soundscape of reggae. Their first single, My Black Girl, was not born from luck, but from a series of almost mythical encounters. Ansel Cridland of the Meditations had taken a liking to them and introduced them to Dobby Dobson, a singer-turned-producer whose sessions at Federal Recording Studio had become a pilgrimage site for raw talent. With hope laced into every lyric, they recorded not one, but 2 singles. The second song, titled Been a Long Time, carried the fingerprints of Barry Biggs, another stalwart of the Jamaican scene. But despite the talent that touched their work, the songs failed to make waves. Tensions rose, disputes over money flared, and just like that, the Mighty Multitudes dissolved into silence. But silence was not Barrington Levy's destiny. Instead of retreating, he threw himself into the dancehall underground, immersing his voice in the fire of live performance. His nights became filled with sound systems, burning spear, tate tone, and electricity hanging heavy in the air. His voice began to carry, began to matter, and then one night, everything changed. The stage was alive with Leroy Smart, a legend in his own right, mesmerizing the crowd like a priest invoking spirits. Amid the blur of voices and smoke, Trinity, known to his mother as Junior Brammer but to the streets as the lyrical acrobat behind three-piece suit, saw Barrington in the crowd. With a wave of his hand, he pulled Barrington into the spotlight. Without flinching, Barrington gripped the mic and let loose 2 songs that would etch his name into dancehall history. The crowd erupted. The walls trembled. But not everyone felt the fire as inspiration. The owner of the sound system that night, his pride steeped in decades of street respect, heard the lyrics of Shine Eye Gal and took them personally. In his mind, the song wasn't about a woman chasing vanity. It was about him. An insult. A public disrespect. In that moment, art was mistaken for assault. Barrington barely had time to understand what was happening before the night turned. A confrontation sparked like flint against steel. Voices rose, bodies shifted, threats hung in the air like smoke. And then came the chase. Barrington ran, not out of guilt, but out of survival. In a place where misunderstandings were often settled with fists, or worse, a misheard lyric could mean the end. But as tension twisted into chaos, Trinity stepped in. Calm, but commanding. He brokered peace the way only someone rooted in the fabric of the music could. He knew what was at stake, not just a young man's safety, but the fragile trust that held the reggae scene together. Trinity's intervention turned what could have been a bloodstained story into a testament of unity. Still, the lesson cut deep. Barrington Levy realized that his voice, his words, had weight, power, the ability to ignite or to heal. And as the dust settled on that chaotic night, a new chapter began, not just for him, but for dancehall music itself. He was no longer the kid from Clarendon with a dream. He had become a force that demanded attention. When Barrington Levy joined forces with Henry Junjo Laws, their partnership didn't just shift the reggae scene, it detonated it. Henry Laws, a man who once navigated the underworld of politics as a street enforcer, had traded muscle for music. And in the smoky booths of Channel One Studio, with the Roots Radix standing tall behind them, they began crafting something raw, futuristic, and unforgettable. Together, They recorded track after track at King Tubby's legendary studio in Waterhouse. Barrington didn't just sing. He carved his voice into each rhythm, creating sonic monuments like Bounty Hunter. These songs were not just hits. They were cultural tremors. The albums followed: Englishman, Shine Eye Gal, Robin Hood. Each one a testament to his voice. Each one pushing the genre beyond the boundaries set by Bob Marley or Dennis Brown. Barrington Levy wasn't just a singer. He was a storyteller, a witness, a survivor. The success of Bounty Hunter opened doors Barrington Levy never knew existed. The streets still claimed him, but now so did studios in London and label executives in New York. Yet for all the lights and global accolades, it was the groundwork in Jamaica, the live sessions, the sound clashes, the smoky studios, that gave his music its bone-deep authenticity. At the heart of those revolutionary recordings was the Roots Radix Band. Their musicianship wasn't just tight, it was prophetic. They could resurrect Studio One classics and inject them with a dancehall urgency that hadn't existed before. Every bass line, every hi-hat, every skank of guitar worked like a spell under Barrington's vocals. The result? A catalog that didn't sound like it belonged to 1979 or 1980, but to some other place ahead of its time. And when those raw recordings reached King Tubby's dub lab, they turned into something even more transcendent. Housed in a modest room tucked deep inside Waterhouse, the studio didn't look like much from the outside. But inside, something alchemical happened. It wasn't just equipment, it was magic. Tubby's apprentices, names like Prince Jammy and Houghton Scientist Brown, weren't just mixing songs. They were sculpting atmospheres. Houghton Brown, dubbed Scientist for good reason, brought a razor-sharp ear to the board. He knew where Barrington's vocals should rise like smoke and where they should drop into bass-pounded silence. Their dub versions weren't just remixes, they were reimaginings. Alternate realities of the same song, tailored for dancehall speakers that could make your bones rattle. When Shine Eye Gal was finally released, it wasn't just a song anymore. It was folklore, a cautionary tale, and a celebration. A track that reminded some of betrayal and others of survival. Barrington never explained who the Shine Eye Gal was, and maybe that was the point. The mystery let everyone see who they needed to see in it. But for Barrington, it was always personal, a mirror of the women he had known, the heartbreak he had tasted, the longing that couldn't be tamed by fame. Despite the hits and growing fame, cracks started to appear in his relationship with Henry Laws. The glitz of studio success often came shadowed by exploitation. Barrington began to see how producers used artists as stepping stones, selling off albums to overseas labels without proper contracts, pocketing the money, and offering vague promises instead of royalties. It wasn't just business, it was betrayal. And betrayal cut deeper when it came from within the community that claimed to protect its own. Determined not to be another name on the long list of exploited Jamaican artists, Barrington made a difficult decision. He walked away from Junjo's label, leaving behind a partnership that had made history. He didn't just want a seat at the table. He wanted to own the table. New producers came into the picture. Linval Thompson, whose gritty ear for detail shaped Poor Man's style, and George Fang, who crafted Money Move, a powerful and urgent record that carried the scent of Kingston streets. George Fang's time in the business was short but unforgettable. Barrington began to work more selectively. He recorded Do Re Mi with leftover rhythms, but the hunger for freedom remained. What he truly needed wasn't just studio time, it was independence. So, in 1982, Barrington Levy made a move few Jamaican artists dared to make at the time. He left Jamaica behind and migrated to England, a place where he could breathe, learn, and above all, reclaim the rights to his own voice. England gave him distance from the chaos, but also perspective. He saw how records were marketed, how contracts were signed, how publishing rights shaped the wealth and legacy of an artist. In Jamaica, his voice had stirred crowds, but in England, his mind sharpened. He became more than an artist. He became a businessman, a guardian of his legacy. For a decade, from 1982 to 1992, Barrington Levy called England home. But home was always a tricky word. His heart remained tethered to Clarendon, to Kingston's dance halls, to the studio where the bass lines never really stopped. In London, he experienced victories, chart placements, TV interviews, international tours, but he never allowed himself to be swallowed by the glamour. Even in the UK, Barrington Levy never shed the echoes of that fateful night when Shine Eye Gal almost got him unalived. The paranoia lingered. So did the resilience. As reggae's influence stretched globally, Barrington Levy's voice became an unofficial passport for the genre. You didn't need to understand patois to feel what he was singing. You just had to listen. And with every listen, people connected to the pain, the betrayal, the yearning in his tone. Years later, back in Jamaica, Barrington reflected on why he left. Producers, he said, would smile at you in the studio and sell your work behind your back the next day. Many artists died poor not because they lacked talent, but because they lacked power, and he had vowed not to be one of them. Clarendon welcomed him back like a son returning from battle with contracts, microphones, and hard-earned wisdom. Today, Barrington Levy finds peace among the quiet hills of the countryside. The noise of Kingston replaced by rustling leaves and distant church bells. But even in peace, the fire in his voice hasn't dimmed. He still performs, still sings Shine Eye Gal with the same raw conviction, not as a victim of its controversy, but as a master of its meaning. He owns that song. He owns every story behind it, including the night he had to run, not from guilt, but from someone else's misunderstanding. That misunderstanding became part of his story, and in a strange way, it also became part of his legend. Now that you've heard the real story behind Shine Eye Gal, do you think the backlash Barrington Levy faced was justified? Or was he simply caught in the crossfire of street ego and lyrical truth? What would you have done in his shoes? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We're listening. And for more untold stories that shaped reggae's raw legacy, don't forget to subscribe. More truth is on the way, and it's louder than ever.